PM Carney takes new approach on tariffs amid global trade shifts. True North News National Desk, August 24, 2025. Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced a sweeping overhaul of Canada's tariff strategy, signaling a more assertive stance in international trade as the country navigates an increasingly protectionist global economy. In a speech delivered at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Ottawa on Thursday, Carney outlined a 21st-century trade defense policy that emphasizes economic resilience, domestic manufacturing, and strategic retaliation in response to unfair trade practices by foreign governments. The shift marks a significant departure from Canada's traditionally conciliatory approach to tariffs and comes amid rising global tensions over trade, particularly with China and the United States. We will no longer stand by while Canadian industries and workers are targeted by predatory trade practices, said Carney. This new framework is about defending our interests with strength, fairness, and foresight. A shift in tone. Canada's tariff policy has long prioritized multilateral cooperation through institutions like the World Trade Organization (WTO), emphasizing free trade and dispute resolution. However, Carney's announcement signals a more unilateral and strategic direction, one that many analysts see as a response to recent developments in Washington and Beijing. Over the past year, the U.S. has ramped up tariffs on key sectors like EV batteries and semiconductors, many of which affect Canadian suppliers. Meanwhile, China has been accused of flooding global markets with subsidized steel and solar panels, severely undercutting Canadian manufacturers. Under the new policy, the federal government will establish a Rapid Trade Response Unit within Global Affairs Canada to assess and respond swiftly to foreign trade actions. Expand retaliatory tariff authority beyond WTO constraints when national industries face sustained economic injury. Prioritize domestic procurement for federal infrastructure projects to support Canadian-made goods. Provide $2 billion in funding over 4 years to modernize Canadian manufacturing and reduce reliance on imports from non-market economies. Industry reaction mixed. Business groups and unions offered mixed reactions to the Prime Minister's announcement. The Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters (CME) Association welcomed the move as a step toward leveling the playing field. For years, our industries have faced unfair competition, especially from countries that don't follow the rules, said CME President Dennis Darby. This approach gives us tools we've long needed. However, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce urged caution, warning that retaliation could escalate trade disputes and harm Canadian exporters. While we understand the need to respond to aggressive trade practices, we must ensure we don't invite unintended consequences that hurt our own supply chains, said Chamber Chair Marie Laflamme. Political calculations in global context. Carney's move is being interpreted by many as a bold political gamble ahead of next year's federal election. Polls show growing anxiety among voters about economic security and job loss due to globalization. With this policy shift, Carney appears to be positioning himself as a pragmatic nationalist, one who supports free trade but is willing to protect Canadian interests when needed. Carney is betting that Canadians want a leader who can stand up to global powers and defend domestic jobs, said political strategist Andrew Llewellyn. It's a fine line to walk, especially for a former central banker who was once the face of globalization. The Prime Minister's announcement also comes as other G7 nations reevaluate their trade policies. The United States, under President Harris, has adopted a more protectionist stance, while the European Union is engaged in its own tariff battle with China over electric vehicles. This isn't about closing borders. It's about being strategic, said Carney. We will continue to support open trade, but not at the cost of our sovereignty, our industries, or our workers. Focus on critical industries. The tariff strategy also reflects a broader national shift toward economic security and self-sufficiency in key sectors such as green energy, healthcare supplies, and technology. The government's new plan identifies 5 critical resilience sectors: clean energy and battery technology, critical minerals and mining, health and pharmaceutical production, agri-tech and food security, advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence. These sectors will receive prioritized funding and protection under the new trade framework, including potential tariff shields and, Buy Canadian, mandates in public procurement. We learned hard lessons during the pandemic, said Industry Minister Anita Anand. We cannot depend solely on global markets for essential goods. This plan helps us build domestic capacity and protect it. Concerns from trade partners. Canada's international allies reacted with cautious interest. U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai said Washington is reviewing the policy for potential impact on bilateral agreements. We respect Canada's sovereign right to defend its economy, but we will be vigilant in ensuring mutual trade remains fair, she said. Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Commerce criticized the new approach as unilateral and discriminatory, and warned of potential countermeasures if Chinese products are targeted. Experts say the policy could test Canada's ability to balance national interests with its role as a middle power committed to global trade norms. Canada risks being caught in the crossfire of US-China tensions, said Dr. Samya Bhattacharya, a trade economist at the University of Toronto. Carney's challenge will be implementing this assertive stance without undermining Canada's reputation as a fair and rule-abiding trader. What comes next? In the coming weeks, the government is expected to release a detailed list of high-risk imports that could face targeted tariffs. Consultations with industry groups will begin in September, and the first retaliatory measures may be announced before the end of the year. The policy also includes a transparency mechanism. All tariff decisions will be subject to independent economic review, with quarterly reporting to Parliament. This is not about trade wars, Carney concluded. It's about modern trade defense, smart, legal, and necessary. As Canada enters this new chapter in its trade policy, the world will be watching to see whether Prime Minister Carney's approach ushers in a new era of economic strength, or triggers unintended battles in an already volatile global economy.